Richard has come back to Boston to find out where Anne's family were from. He's meeting historian Bob Anderson in the City Hall archives.
So I know that Ezekiel was born and christened in England around about 1624, but I know very little about his wife Anne. What can you tell me about her and her parents?
Okay, well, Anne was born right here in Boston.
Huh?
Her father had come to Boston at least as early as 1632. We know that, in fact, because Anne's birth is recorded here. It's one of the earliest births recorded in the town of Boston.
Really?
Yeah. Boston had been settled in the fall of 1630.
So just 2 years after the settlement.
2 years after the settlement. And we do have the record of Anne's birth right here.
So these are genuine originals?
Genuine originals, written by the first town clerk of Boston.
1635, 1636. I can see the numbers okay. It's the names that are difficult to read. No, I can't find it.
All right. It's right here. There's Anne, the daughter of William, and William is abbreviated W.M. Beamsley, and Anne, his wife, was born the 1st of the 12th month, 1632.
Gosh, you're good at this.
So she's born in that winter of 1632-33.
Okay.
And just a half a mile from here, their house was in the north end of Boston.
Half a mile from where we're sitting?
Yes.
Gosh. This document is truly remarkable, isn't it? And, you know, my relatives, my blood ancestors are on this page.
Right there.
I found them.
Yes.
I've come right back to the founding of the colonies and my first American relative.
So your family is part of the absolute founding of this part of the world.
Absolutely, and I'm so proud of them, actually. I'm so proud of them. It's almost impossible, isn't it, to imagine what Boston would have looked like, what, 400 years ago? I mean, these people had travelled a couple of thousand miles over the Atlantic, and when they got here, there was nothing for them, nothing except the space and the land that they craved. I can just imagine as the boats pulled in, and they looked at this wilderness, really, covered in trees, with just a few people moving around, putting up shacks, chopping wood, and the sound of hammering as people started to put together their very, very basic shelters, and the smell of kind of raw, sawn wood hanging in the air, resin, but basically pretty chaotic. I think they would have been pretty daunted at first at seeing just how brand new and fundamentally undeveloped Boston was.
Before leaving Boston, Richard wants to find out why his family came to America. He's meeting Professor Brendan McConville.
How should I think of this couple as they step off the boat? As Boston's founding fathers amongst them, or founding families? What phrase would you as a historian use to describe them, to categorize them?
They're certainly among the original settlers, original founders of the society, but the true leader in the sense of this migration was this person, John Winthrop.
I've heard of him.
Winthrop was a leading Puritan gentleman from southeast England. He had substantial resources and was widely respected in Puritan circles, which allowed him to organize this voyage.
So it's entirely probable, if not absolutely certain, that William and Anne were on one of his ships and possibly conversed with him, saw him?
They certainly saw him when they were in Boston. It was a small town. They absolutely have to have seen him.
In 1630, a fleet of 11 ships left England carrying migrants to America. On board were the men and women who had become the first settlers of the city of Boston. Amongst them were William and Anne Beamsley. They were led by the Puritan John Winthrop, who'd gathered these families together to settle the New World. Though some migrants were making the journey for economic reasons, many made the journey in search of religious freedom. In the early decades of the 1600s, the Church of England was under pressure. It had separated from Rome nearly a century earlier. but many followers believed it remained too steeped in Catholicism. As separatists split from the official church, a new religious movement emerged, known as Puritanism. And by 1630, New England had become a safe haven for its followers.
So were William and Anne Puritans themselves then, do you think?
Most of the migrants who came were of Puritan leanings. But in the case of your ancestors, we know for certain that they were indeed Puritans.
How do you know that?
By examining the early church records of First Church in Boston, we can determine that Anne's husband became a church member in 1635.
And you've got that here?
Right here.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking for a William here. I'm not sure if I'm going to find him. Is that a William there?
I think that is.
Is that him?
I believe it is.
This isn't a setup, honestly.
No,
this is the first time I've gone more or less straight to an entry that is of my ancestor.
It says William Beemsley, laborer, and it looks like March 1635.
It is March, you're
Yeah,
right.
March 1635.
So he was accepted into the church in the spring of 1635, about 2 or 3 years after coming here.
Yes. The two key things that he would have gained by coming to America. The first is a status in a new church community that he might not have achieved in an English parish in the same way. Church membership in Boston, full church membership in the Boston First Church is an extremely important thing, socially and spiritually. The second thing he would have gained is the opportunity to own his own land. Because of the abundance of land in America, there would have been an opportunity for him to gain land that simply would not have existed for him had he remained in England.
You know, I started this personal journey of mine a couple of weeks ago, thinking I was going to go back maybe 150, 200 years, and it was all going to be about Canadian and Scottish ancestry. And it's led me to America. It's led me to one of the first Americans and her parents who came from England. You've really put the icing on the cake for me. Thank you very much indeed.
A pleasure.
Great to see you.
Great to see you.
It's still filtering into my consciousness, but I feel almost redefined by what I've discovered over the last couple of weeks. Knowing where I come from, knowing what my ancestors did, and how they handed what they'd achieved down to the next generation has given me an extra dimension, I think, in the way that I regard myself and what I am, you know, what I've become. My ancestors came with burning hope in their heart, with extraordinary optimism, and with the determination to face down the fears that must have gripped them from time to time. They tried and they did it, they succeeded. And I hope I've got something in me that they had in them in such abundance. I hope a little bit of it's been passed on.